What is up, besties? Welcome back to my channel, and Happy New Year! If you're new here, my name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if you're into either one of those things, please consider subscribing for more. The Bad Batch is finally back for Season 2, and in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the first two episodes, Spoils of War and Ruins of War. Before I get into my review, please make sure to like the video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought of the Season 2 premiere. I'm going to be putting out weekly reviews for each new Bad Batch episode as they air, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss out. You can check out all my Bad Batch content at the link in the cards and the description as well. Now, let's get into this review. So in episode 1, Spoils of War, we see the Bad Batch return to Cid's parlor from their mission on the tropical beach planet we first saw in the Season 2 trailer. I can't lie, I totally forgot about AZ, so it was such a nice surprise to see him there at the parlor to greet them. Cid then offers them a new mission, raiding Count Dooku's war chest from his castle on Sereno, promising the reward could finally buy them their freedom. Hunter is initially apprehensive, but eventually agrees, realizing their freedom would not only provide them a better future, but a better future for Omega specifically. On their way to Sereno, Echo speaks to Hunter alone, saying they should instead use the reward to continue fighting to help others in the galaxy, rather than for themselves and Omega specifically, and of course she overhears and feels bad, which comes up later in the episode. Once they arrive at Castle Sereno, Echo, Tech, Wrecker, and Omega sneak onto one of the cargo ships to steal from the containers, while Hunter keeps watch. The batch eventually gets split up when Hunter causes a distraction by blowing up some of the Imperial fighters, alerting the Empire of their presence and causing the transports to take off early. Wrecker is able to make it back to Hunter with one of the containers, but Echo, Tech, and Omega are locked inside the transport as it ascends into the sky. As the three of them fight their way through the cargo transport looking for an escape, Hunter and Wrecker find themselves fighting their way into the castle against the Imperial clones. Once the Imperials are made aware of Echo, Tech, and Omega's presence on the transport, they release the escape pods attempting to trap them on board, but thanks to Omega's Imperial ship studies, the three of them escape inside one of the cargo containers, releasing them all from the transport itself. Episode 2, Ruins of War, picks right back up where we left off, with Echo, Tech, and Omega inside the container, falling through the sky to the ground below, while Hunter and Wrecker make their way to the lower levels of Dooku's castle and escape to the city below. Eventually, the container crash lands on the side of a mountain, allowing Echo, Tech, and Omega to escape, but not before Tech's leg gets crushed between falling crates in the process. I got serious flashbacks to Nemec during the Aldhani escape in the Andor series, so I was really nervous for Tech, but luckily, he makes it out okay. Watching the container fall through the sky also made me so anxious, and seeing our heroes inside holding on for their lives while smaller containers and crates around them bounced all over the place really made my stomach turn. As they make their way into the nearby forest, they discover they're being watched by an old man named Romar, and essentially force him to take them in to get injured Tech safe while they come up with a plan. Romar turns out to be a Sereno local and explains how his people were forced from their homes due to the Empire's bombardment of the planet. He also explains how Dooku got his riches from not only outside worlds, but from Sereno as well, stealing from his own people. The themes discussed here are very similar to those we saw throughout the Clone Wars series, and even those in the Dooku episodes of Tales of the Jedi.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Throughout their time in Romar's home, Omega is insistent on going back to retrieve the containers from the war chest, but Echo consistently denies her until she eventually sneaks off on her own. While they rest, Hunter and Wrecker make their way through the wreckage of the city, hiding from the Imperial clone patrol searching for them and the missing containers from the cargo ship. Eventually they're spotted and surrounded by the Imperials, but Wrecker uses an old battery pack from the wreckage to create some sort of blaster cannon, literally blasting their way back to the Marauder. Big himbo with a big gun. We love to see it. Recognizing that Omega's missing and realizing she went back to the cargo container, Echo heads out to find her with Tech, slowly following behind him. With Imperial clones on his tail, Echo finds the rappelling cable and descends down the cliff to the container to find Omega. As they climb back up to the opening to escape, the container slowly starts inching its way down the side of the mountain. Omega loses her grip and loses her backpack in the process, which she's basically packed full of jewels and credits, and insists on trying to gather everything back up, but Echo tells her to forget about it, explaining it's not important. only to find out Omega has been so insistent about retrieving the items from the war chest because she overheard his conversation with Hunter on the Marauder, believing it's her fault that the batch can't have a normal life. But Echo is able to convince her to let it all go, and they make their escape to the side of the mountain as the container plunges to the ground below. Tech eventually catches up, limping, and fights off the 3 Imperial clones at the top of the cliff, but it basically takes everything out of him and he collapses to the ground afterwards. I was really nervous for Tech at this point because things were not looking good, but he's actually woken up by Romar, who's come to help. Romar pulls Echo and Omega up the side of the mountain while Tech fights off the incoming Imperials, just in time for Hunter and Wrecker to arrive and pick them up in the Marauder. As they fly away, Echo and Omega have a moment where he reassures her that they made the right choice in giving up everything for her because it ultimately made them better, saying given the choice, he'd do it all over again, and I love this moment between them. Then in the final scenes of the episode, we see Imperial clone Captain Wilco going over the report details of the events on Sereno with Vice Admiral Rampart, explaining that the group they encountered was most likely Clone Force 99. But Rampart says this is an inaccuracy since the group perished during the fall of Tipoca City. Captain Wilco tries to convince Rampart of the Bad Batch's survival, insisting he won't submit a falsified report, seemingly overcoming his inhibitor chip. Though, in a twist of events, Rampart murders Captain Wilco to cover himself over this error. And that's the end of the episode. So throughout these 2 episodes, we can really see how much Omega has grown from Season 1. She's really become a capable fighter and really an integral part of Clone Force 99. A great example of this growth actually came when they first exit the ship on Sereno and Hunter asks her, "Are you coming?" This was a huge contrast from Season 1 where I felt like he was constantly telling her to stay with the ship. I loved getting to see Count Dooku's castle again, and just like Wrecker points out, it still manages to have a creepy, sinister vibe to it, especially now that it's been abandoned. I was kind of waiting for some big discovery that never happened while they were there though, especially after the epic setup of this mission, only for them to make it out with literally nothing in the end. It was so cool to see the Imperial Class 4 cargo ship again too, which made its first appearance in Star Wars Rebels. I love the introduction of the character Romar and his interactions with Echo, Tech, and Omega. I especially love the scene where he gives Omega a kaleidoscope. She thinks it's made of jewels, but as Romar puts it, it's just a toy to make you happy, really showing how Omega's never been able to just be a child and why gaining their freedom is so important to Hunter. I also loved Romar's discussion with Tech about the data core containing his people's culture and history. Tech refers to it as a separatist archive, but Romar corrects him saying it's Serenian, explaining how his people were just that, people, before the separatist movement and the Clone Wars. I really loved all the time Echo and Tech both got to shine in this episode because it was something that was really missing from Season 1, and honestly, I think they're my 2 favorites out of the Bad Batch. Seeing Vice Admiral Rampart kill Captain Wilco at the end of episode 2 also just continues to show how little the Empire cares for the clones, treating them expendable and as less than beings. And even though it's redundant, and I understand why, it still annoys me that the Bad Batch only uses stun blasts against their enemies. And that's the only time I'm going to say anything about it. All in all, I thought the premiere episodes were really fun, and I'm so happy to have Star Wars Animation back to look forward to. But what did you think of the Bad Batch Season 2 premiere, and what do you think will happen next? Let me know down in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter so we can chat more about it together. I'll be putting out weekly reviews for each new Bad Batch episode as they air, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. You can catch up with all my Bad Batch content at the link in the description and on the end screen of this video as well. Please consider checking those videos out and leaving a like. I really appreciate all of your support. To keep up with all my Star Wars content, make sure to subscribe and consider following me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Scotty Holiday SW for all my latest updates. Thank you all for watching as always, and may the Force be with you.